I still remember the exact morning it started. The air was cold, the kind of quiet country morning where you can hear birds from half a mile away. I walked onto my porch holding a cup of coffee, expecting another peaceful day on the ranch my grandfather bought nearly 60 years ago. Instead, I heard engines roaring in the distance. At first, I assumed it was work happening near the new luxury neighborhood being built a few miles away. That development had been expanding rapidly for months. Expensive homes, private trails, gated entrances, the kind of place designed for wealthy retirees and business executives escaping city life. But something felt wrong. The noise was too close. I grabbed my binoculars and looked toward the western pasture near the creek line. My heart nearly stopped. Bulldozers were moving across my field. Construction crews were placing markers in the ground. Trucks loaded with gravel rolled across land that legally belonged to me and my family. I jumped into my pickup truck and drove straight toward them. Dust filled the air as I pulled up beside a man in a bright orange vest studying a set of blueprints. I got out and demanded to know what they thought they were doing. The man looked annoyed, not nervous. He calmly explained that the land was now part of the neighboring HOA expansion project. According to him, the county had already approved the development plans months earlier. He acted as if I were some confused old farmer who didn't understand property lines. I told him he was standing on private property. He shrugged. That response made my blood boil. I drove directly to the county records office that same afternoon. For hours, I reviewed maps, filings, and development permits. Finally, I found the problem hidden deep inside the paperwork. The HOA developers had included a large section of my acreage inside their expansion survey. Somehow, despite clear deed records proving ownership, the county approved it without properly verifying the boundaries. The HOA planned to build luxury cabins, fishing docks, walking trails, and private recreation areas directly on my land. Most people expected me to explode publicly. Friends told me to block the roads immediately. Others said I should call the sheriff and stop the construction before another brick was laid. But I didn't. Instead, I hired one of the best property attorneys in the state. Then I did something nobody expected. I stayed silent. For 8 long months, I watched them continue building. Expensive cabins rose near the creek. Power lines were installed. Paved access roads cut through fields where my father once grazed cattle. The HOA celebrated online, advertising the cabins as part of their exclusive wilderness retreat. Meanwhile, my attorney quietly gathered evidence. Every invoice, every permit, every survey warning, every public statement claiming ownership. The developers believed they had already won. What they didn't realize was that every single day they continued building made the legal disaster waiting for them even bigger. As construction continued, the HOA became more arrogant. They acted like they were untouchable. The board members posted promotional videos online showing luxury cabins overlooking the creek on my property. Wealthy buyers were already reserving vacation memberships before construction was even complete. But behind the scenes, my attorney and I were uncovering information that would eventually destroy their entire defense. The deeper we investigated, the worse it became for them. At first, the HOA's lawyers tried to frame everything as a simple mapping error. They claimed the county records were confusing and suggested nobody intentionally crossed property lines. But that argument collapsed the moment we obtained internal emails from the development company during legal discovery. One message changed everything. Months before construction started, a senior land consultant had warned the developers about serious boundary inconsistencies involving my acreage. The email clearly stated there was a strong possibility the proposed cabin project overlapped privately owned agricultural land. In other words, they knew there was a problem before a single machine entered my property. And they ignored it. Why? Because redesigning the project would have cost millions of dollars and delayed construction for nearly a year. They gambled that nobody would challenge them strongly enough to stop it. They were wrong. People constantly asked me why I allowed the project to continue instead of stopping it immediately. The answer was strategic. My attorney explained that if we halted construction early, the HOA could claim it was an honest mistake, pay a small settlement, and quietly walk away. But if they fully completed the project while knowingly building on disputed land, that changed everything. The financial consequences would become catastrophic. Every new cabin increased their liability. Every paved road deepened the damage. Every advertisement claiming ownership strengthened our case. Then the HOA made the single biggest mistake of all. About 8 months into construction, they sent me an official legal notice demanding that I remove sections of MY fencing because it allegedly interfered with resident access to the cabin community. That letter was pure gold for our lawsuit. Up until then, the HOA could still pretend confusion existed over the property boundaries. But that notice proved something much more dangerous. They were now openly asserting ownership over land they did not legally possess. The next morning, my attorney filed the lawsuit. The reaction was immediate. Local newspapers picked up the story within days. Reporters began investigating how county officials approved construction on disputed land. Homeowners inside the HOA panicked after realizing the luxury retreat they paid for might not legally exist. The developers suddenly stopped posting celebratory updates online. Then came the courtroom hearings. That's when the truth started collapsing around them in public. Surveyors testified. County officials admitted errors. Internal emails were displayed on giant courtroom screens. And little by little, the image of the powerful, unstoppable HOA began falling apart in front of everyone watching. The courtroom was packed the day the judge delivered the final ruling. Reporters lined the walls. HOA residents filled entire rows of seats, many realizing for the first time that the luxury cabin retreat they paid thousands for might disappear overnight. The developers still looked confident when proceedings began. Their attorneys arrived carrying stacks of documents, hoping to convince the judge that the situation was too complicated to undo. They argued that removing the completed project would create enormous financial harm for homeowners and investors. But the evidence against them was overwhelming. The judge focused heavily on those warnings. He repeatedly asked the HOA lawyers one question. They never gave a convincing answer, because there wasn't one. Over several days, witnesses testified about how the HOA ignored concerns from surveyors, consultants, and even county employees. One former contractor admitted management instructed workers to keep moving forward, despite unresolved property disputes. That testimony crushed their credibility. Then the financial numbers were revealed. Nearly $12 million had been spent building the cabins, roads, electrical systems, and recreation facilities on my land. Investors stood to lose massive amounts of money if the project failed. The HOA expected the judge to protect those investments. Instead, he delivered a ruling nobody in the room expected. The court confirmed that the entire cabin development had been constructed illegally on my property. Because the HOA knowingly continued construction despite clear warnings, the judge ruled they were fully responsible for the consequences. Then came the bombshell. The HOA was ordered to surrender control of every structure built on my land unless they could negotiate a settlement directly with me. Silence filled the courtroom. Some homeowners looked stunned. Others were furious at the HOA board for dragging them into disaster. Reporters rushed outside to break the story before the hearing even officially ended. The developers tried desperately to negotiate afterward, but by then the power had shifted completely. For months, they treated me like an obstacle they could ignore. Now they needed my permission for everything. Eventually, a massive settlement agreement was reached. The HOA paid millions in damages, legal fees, and land restoration costs. Several board members resigned. County officials launched investigations into how the permits were approved in the first place. And the cabins? The same luxury retreat they built while believing they could steal my land legally became part of my property portfolio. The irony was unbelievable. They spent millions building a private paradise for themselves.